started.
There it goes.
There we go. Good. Awesome. So maybe we'll start with a quick intro.
Yeah.
One of the three that are kind of leading this thing. I'm Jon Haws. I'm the Dean of Students and Athletic and Activities Director at Metcalf School. That is in Normal, Illinois, on the campus of Illinois State University.
I'm Don Williamson. I'm the District Athletic Director for Rockford Public Schools.
I'm Derrick Zerrusen. I'm the Athletic Director at Teutopolis High School and Middle School, or junior high, I guess.
Awesome. And so we're going to get this thing rolling. This is all about building your team building it. And it's not like team building as in like your individual, team. And we're going to, find ways to, with our little team, make it, make this sport fun, make this team come together. This is talking about like the bigger vision, your team, your athletic activities department, right? And so one of the things we're looking at, three different kind of topics I have, and I'm going to put a one-pager in the notes. I'll do that multiple times throughout. But three main topics: setting your vision, finding your people, and number three, keeping it moving. How do we keep those plates spinning and keep all those systems going? And so one question I want to pose at least to Derrick to get us started, because he is both at the middle school or junior high and high school level, is just what is the difference in philosophy between middle school versus high school? And sometimes when those things are separate, like they are in my case, maybe I'm a little bit too elementary and not stepping it up enough for middle school athletics, or maybe I'm trying to run my middle school like it's a high school program. So maybe, Derrick, what are some of the keys, I guess, that you see differences in philosophy, or maybe in some similarities?
Yeah, so there's a couple things there. First of all, Nicole joined us. I dropped your one pager back in the chat, so everybody should have access to that again, just to kind of guide us. When you asked that, I kind of thought back that they asked me that when I interviewed for the position. This was my first experience with junior high. Like when I was going through college, they asked if I wanted to get my mid-level endorsement. They had me do some observations with sixth graders to find out, and I don't have my mid-level endorsement after that. So not necessarily my age group, but from knowing the IESA and the competitive nature there, and our school's competitiveness in that organization, honestly, I kind of take my junior high programs a little more like my varsity programs. I want them to be competitive at both levels. We're going to have B teams to the extent that we have kids to have a B team and can find B team games. And we don't treat those kids any differently. We just have a B team game, and those are the kids that play. C minutes before volleyball games, stuff like that, just to get kids more time, because how many times have you seen in junior high a kid be 6 foot tall and they teach him how to play center and basketball, and then he doesn't grow, and now he can't play high school basketball because he doesn't have a guard skill set and everybody else is 6'5", right? So trying to help develop at all levels by having some of those C games or B minutes or whatever you want to call them, for different things. And then really almost more of that elementary, like this is where everybody gets to play, comes into really like the fresh soft level in high school and the JV levels in high school. I expect that more there than I do at my 7th and 8th grade level, especially when we get to the postseason, because, we're trying to put plaques on the wall. We're trying to put trophies in a case, a little bit too, which is not always the most friendly answer. And I feel like a lot of people want to take it a little more elementary than that. But that's not where my community's at. And so that's why my answer is the way that it is. It's very community-based. That's what my community wants to see.
Yep. And I think that matters, and there's definitely some value to that. And I find it a little bit different in my space, where it is very, being on a university campus where everything is very much, and it's not to say that, academics aren't taken seriously, right, at other places, but it's like that is like the focal point at ours. Like I'll tell you that in terms of IESA state championship banners, we've got 5 in Scholastic Bowl and 3 and everything else in our school history, right? And so really that's been just a focus in our building. And so sometimes, and there's been more of a shift recently to more of what you're talking about, Derrick, just a little more competitive. Yeah, we want to throw some trophies on the wall. It's not hey, if you sign up, you're guaranteed to play, or you're even at this point guaranteed to make the team. Because we also have expanded a little bit in terms of numbers, and we know there are ISA rules. Like you can only have so many jerseys to hand out and so many on your bench, especially when it comes to postseason. So really, yeah, super important. But understanding the difference between those levels, I love the similarities, and you're going to help with that, right? Because you're at both levels to be able to make sure that there's a progression there. I would say for some middle schools and mine included, I'm a K-8 building. So it's really bringing people along for that third and fourth grade. They maybe played in some outside rec leagues, things like that, like non-school. We actually start our school sports in fifth grade. So 5, 6, we have that progression on what that looks like, and then our 7, 8 programs. And yeah, there's some tension, as we move through those levels, and some tough decisions that have to be made, and also really educating families on, hey, this is what it looks like building that bridge so that way they're not surprised when they get to the high school level and like, wait, what do you mean there are cuts? What do what do you mean we don't just get to sign up and play? I'm finding that that's important as well.
Yeah,
And
and
good.
oh, go ahead.
No, you're good.
I was gonna say that actually kind of came back to bite me. Our junior high track program, we've got 4 head coaches, which is a recipe for disaster, but I can't get anybody to change our contract. And we so like 7th grade boys, 8th grade boys, 7th grade girls, 8th grade girls. The 2 boys coaches are 2 of the most competitive coaches in my district. Is the way that I will say that while this is being recorded. And they just they want to have like 10 kids on the track team. Like they want to fill their spots and that's it. And I'm like, guys, you have 80 kids on the track team. Like, yeah, 15% of those kids are here because they love track and they want to compete. And you probably have 20% of kids who might recognize like this is a good way for me to stay in shape so I can do high school basketball next year. And then you have the other 65% of kids who are just there because junior high track is the social event of the year. And you've got all of them. Like the parents aren't keeping their good kids at home. They're sending the best they got, and you guys get to coach all of them, and you're going to coach all of them, and we're going to we're going to get kids in and get kids time to help develop them. But trying to explain how that is different for their program than maybe a softball team is when I've only got 15 girls on my softball team. So in softball, it's easy that everyone's going to get time. And if I don't get B innings, it's really not the end of the world. But by the same token, those 2 coaches aren't staff members, so they don't always see that, when and you guys see that too from your coaches who work outside the education bubble. Some of those difficulties come with that.
And I think that that it always brings great value too, right? It's fresh perspective, and I think it's great to have a balance there. And we'll talk about that more in kind of that next segment with Find Your People. I'm going to jump real quick before we get to travel versus school sports. I'm curious about because the idea of playing time naturally comes up, and to me that's like when you talk about setting your vision, it's something that I feel like we need to tell our story on that. We need to set the expectation. Otherwise, you find, and I think it's okay to have some variation program to program, sport to sport, because there's different nuances. It's a lot different for example, in basketball where you have free substitution, in and out, a couple minutes here, a couple minutes there, a few seconds here, whatever that looks like. Versus volleyball, once you put them in, they're part of that rotation in that spot. Also, a limited number of substitutions per set. Baseball, softball, where they must go in a certain spot in the batting order, and then there's reentry rules. Like there's some limitations depending on the sport, so it's never clear cut. But playing time, fair versus equal, no matter what your philosophy is. I think it needs to be stated. I guess I'll start with that. Dawn, do you have, I guess, an opinion on, and you don't have to get into which you think is correct, but is that something maybe, Dawn, that you address personally? Does it depend on school? Because you have multiple schools. Does it depend on the level? How do you approach that?
Yeah, I think you're right in terms of it's different by sport and by program. We've got 10 middle schools in our district that participate in sports. And they're all going to be different competitively. So some of our more competitive middle schools might cut. So their whole philosophy is going to be different than some of our smaller middle schools. They're just struggling to field teams. everyone's gonna play because they don't have enough people. You know what I mean? So I think really it comes down to that. So yeah, I say the same thing that you said. You just have to set that expectation. You tell them ahead of time. This is one of those sports that we cut, and this is one of those sports where um, it's going to be competitive. Some of them aren't. Like, cross country. Yeah, your top five might be amazing, but you could still have five other kids who are just learning how to do it, and that's fine. And so I think as long as everyone's clear, and as long as it's written down somewhere so that when people ultimately say that they had no idea that playing time was not going to be equal, even though you've told them, you can point back to say, remember I shared this thing with you and you all signed it. We were all at that meeting and you said that you understood that potentially your child might not play as much as someone else.
And I think that's as you mentioned, yeah, definitely varying sport to sport. But if and you said put it in writing, that's something I sometimes struggle with, because like once it's there, it sometimes loses flexibility. It's a black and white, which can be good and bad, right? There's good, it's non-negotiable. You kind of can hold yourself to that standard. But maybe even writing it in such a way, like again, is saying that like I will strive to play every player in every game. That might be something like that in there. But also other things to keep in mind, it is the fact that, well, what about attitude and effort and attendance? Let's add that in there too, right? So I got a kid who's missed a bunch of practices, and then but it's still equal playing time in fifth grade, so we're good. So leaving some flexibility, and for some understanding of other circumstances. But I guess before we shuffle to kind of that next segment, finding your people, I do want to touch on the travel versus school sports. One thing that I've always really preached to our student athletes and families is, if you are depending on our school to make or break your child's athletic career, you are making a grave mistake. Don't put all your eggs in this basket. And just because as we know, there's so much that needs to happen outside of the sport, and travel sports are not. Whether it's just off-season workouts, whether it's just kind of keeping up with some of the skills and other just natural requirements of your activity or a sport, whatever it is. We know it takes more than just the school. That said, it feels like travel sometimes can impact the school scene, and that expectation from travel is probably going to be different than the expectation at school. And so how do you navigate that, or maybe what are some of your thoughts on travel versus school sports?
Do you want to go, Derrick?
Um, I guess I don't have a ton of nice things to say about travel ball. My brother-in-law coaches a travel ball team. When I was at my last school district, uh, we had a sports column, like a sports only news outlet that was just doing stuff for our county because the local newspaper stopped covering sports. Um, and I remember a headline that one of the local travel softball teams was wrapping up their season at 162 and 30 something or other. I mean, we're talking 200 games over the summer. Like we're not, we're doing too much, guys. And that's also the organization my brother-in-law coaches for. So yeah.
Well, I will say, Derrick, that I can't stand travel sports so much that my wife and I founded a youth baseball and softball travel organization.
Yep.
And so my wife and I run 19 Legacy out of Bloomington Normal, and it was to stop the crazy, right? And
Yeah.
now you're still going to look at like our schedules or some of the things we have going on, and realize that's still crazy, and it is,
Yep.
right? But it's trying to kind of again limit that and just make sure that kiddos get a great experience, and to your point, Derrick, of all levels, whether, and yeah, sure, there are cuts, there are but you still have different ability levels, and I still think sports can be for everyone. It's about finding the right fit. And one of the challenges I have with travel versus school is, of course, with travel, there's generally a little more of a cost involved. And therefore, I think because because they put that down payment on that sport, there's that natural, I'll just say entitlement to
Yeah.
then receive that playing time, or a more, I would say a more equal experience versus equitable or fair once you get into school sports where there's quite a bit, a lot less money, exchanged. Like, I think our activity fees are like $60 right now. And then that's, compared to, $1,000, $1,200, $1,500 for travel sports. And so I can understand why we have that. Or for example, in baseball and softball, we call batting the entire lineup, right? You bat the whole roster. So you have 11 or 12 deep that everybody bats, right? Everybody's getting into the game, in and out. Once you get into the rules of, hey, you got a straight, play 9 or limit those rosters and those opportunities, it gets a little more challenging. And so educating families on that transition to understand that, hey, it's not everybody's just entitled to set foot on the court or on the field just because you've got the jersey and paid that fee.
Yeah.
So I
sure.
think I might be a little bit different. So I am a fan of travel because I don't think that none of us are good at anything if we only did it for 3 months, right? So if we only did our school season and we're passionate about it, we should have that available to us, right? But and to your previous question, like what's the difference? I think that to me is the differences between like club and travel. I mean, travel and school is this playing time issue, this entitlement issue. Um, I think that that's what middle school is for to me, is to introduce families to what school-based sports are about. Like school-based sports means you're passing classes, you're going to classes, you're being a decent human being in class. You get to represent your school. So that's the biggest difference. And for us, I think that's what we harp on at our middle school is you're learning how to play sports at school. Like we understand you may be doing this travel thing, and that's awesome. And we reap the benefits of it, and that's great. But for school-based sports, you still have to do these things just like whether you're the top kid or you're the last kid on the roster. All of y'all have to go to class. All of y'all have to do the things, that are required of being on the team. And I guess I will say on the other side too, I always call us a free lunch district, right? So um, travel isn't always an option for our children. So middle school is so important because for a lot of our kids, it's going to be their first introduction to sports. They've not been on a team before. So obviously we've got haves and have-nots in our district. But for our have-nots, this is their first time. They've never done it before. They've never been coached. They don't understand. They're excited to wear a uniform. Like all of it is just like, this is great. So middle school for us is like a gateway into sports and to open things up for our children. So I'm a big fan of travel, but also it's not really an option for all of our kids. So middle school becomes like hugely important in our district.
I love that. Again, that's getting back to that community
Mhm.
awareness, right? And
Right.
and those partnerships there. That's fantastic. And you bring up a great point too about the name across their chest and representing the school. I do find with travel and again love all the extra opportunities and the higher level of competition in some cases, right? But the idea that in travel, it's not uncommon to take off that jersey after the game's over and throw on a different one and go in, right. But the idea that you're representing your school when you go to another school, and what does that look like? How is that valued and perceived? I think there's again great elements to each one, some drawbacks to each one. But I think it's something that does at least need to be addressed. So having it in the back of our mind, what's the difference between those two and what does that look like? So I want to move to kind of the part 2 here. Find your people. I just happened to list again, offhand as more of a placeholder for the conversation. But when I look at like find your people, I don't have a ton here. I'm actually not in the main office. I'm actually in a different little annex I'm by the middle school wing in our building. And so those conversations aren't always as easy. It's not like I have an admin assist that is directly tied to my position where they're helping with athletics and activities. So it's a bit of a challenge for me, but with all the things, the laundry list of things that we need to accomplish, once we've set our vision and now we're getting our systems running, who are those people and how do we keep it moving? And so the main office team is absolutely essential. Those are your people who are, greeting families as they come in the door each day. They are the ones maybe fielding that first phone call. Hey, when was practice? And they may not even know all the time, but just making sure that, they are people who are, well connected. They know who to find and when. I think that's super important. But I guess, how do you rely maybe on your main office and then other members of your admin team to support you while leading your programs?
I'm going to let Derrick hop in on this one because I am in the district office and I
Right.
have no children here in the building.
Congratulations.
Right.
Oh man. Yeah, I use my secretaries a ton. So our junior high, we have one secretary. She's the principal secretary and the athletic secretary. But that was until I got here. That was the same person. Like our principal's been the principal for the last 15 years. He's on the IESA board, and he was the athletic director until I got here 3 years ago. And he took over for the principal that was there when I was there as a student, who was also the athletic director at that time too. Like that's what we've always done. So she does a great job of putting out for officials and knowing what's going on. I had an excellent secretary at the high school who had been in that role for 3 years, really cared about sports, was at every game just because she wanted to go to games. Um, buys season tickets, even though she gets in free because, buying them for her family and stuff too. Like, just a fantastic person to have in that role, understood it, knew what we were looking for, knew at the games like, hey, that official did not do a very good job. He's probably not coming back next year type of thing. Like she was able to help with some of those decisions too. She moved into a role that's just the principal secretary, and she's actually leaving that at the end of the school year. And got someone who is here for 2 hours a day in my secretary role and doesn't really care about athletics, doesn't go to any games. Her husband is our drama director, and she's super helpful with that. She's good from the administrative side, like getting officials, getting them a contract. As far sending the initial email and then getting approval for who they're going to be, and then we get them back. She'll get a contract, but like doesn't get it in the way that my others have. And just to have that disparity, like going from someone who got it to someone who kind of doesn't, has been very interesting in the day to day that I need them to do, overseeing both programs.
And I think that's also, okay too, right? I mean, it's not,
Yeah.
obviously it's not preferred. You'd love to have that, someone with just a wealth of background on this, that, or the other. But, sometimes we can find someone who can, pick up that slack in other areas. And a lot of times, it's something else is going to kind of fall on that coach. Hey, can you do me a favor? And, when that other team gets here, can you just, greet them and show them where the locker room is, or something like that, that maybe you had a different front man, or woman for that before, because I can't always be at the door. I might be popping popcorn or something, so it's so important just to make sure that those are covered. And yeah, we can definitely take it for granted whenever we have someone who just gets it, because it's not just about maybe what's in that job description, but those little extras that those individuals think of outside of that, that like make all the difference. And man, it really takes a lot off our plate. Another thing I'll add to, for me personally, the admin team is huge. And so just having that support from, we have a principal, assistant principal who mainly oversees elementary. And then I'm dean of students at middle school. So just making sure that we're on the same page, and we have home events, because they've been gracious enough to cover a lot of those. We do try and kind of divvy those out, so it's not always me at every single game, though I try to catch the vast majority, because if things come up, it's always good to have context for, what the situation was. But really allowing that, the opportunity for other administrators to get in there and kind of do the work, but also making sure I communicate with them of, hey, like, here's our philosophy, here's what to expect at these types of, yeah, we are competitive at this. Whereas like 7, 8, maybe a 5th and 6th grade game, it's a little more relaxed. And so that way, they don't come in with the lens of, man, hey, that 8th grade coach didn't get all their players in, because not everybody comes from athletics. And so just having that understanding, of what that looks like, and they can run the show, when you're gone. And then Sarah and Nicole, I see two names on there. Sarah and Nicole, if you want to, jump in if you have questions, by all means, feel free. And again, there's also a one pager in the chat. And then when I look at other people, obviously coaches are super important. Really the difference between in the building versus out of the building. We're actually in the middle of in transition in one of our programs where we have someone who's in the building who expressed a desire to lead a program, and that coach is going to do that next year. Was our seventh grade coach, is now moving to that eighth grade role. I think they've earned that, put in their time, and so I'm excited for that next year. And so just having someone in the building is huge, but it's not always possible either. Are there maybe I ask this for Don, are there I don't know, what do you expect, from your coaches at the middle school level? It's maybe different again from a high school where you have maybe a larger program and you've got three different levels to juggle, but what is expected of your coaches at the middle school level?
Well, this has been, so you've hit on something that's like so like deeply ingrained in me. I love coaches. And we struggle. It's just, we're a big district, right? So we've got over 800 coaches in our district. So that means some of them are amazing, and then there are some that are not. But it's on us, right, from the district office to make sure people at least understand just foundationally what we expect. So we actually created one of those, like at the beginning of the school year, you got to do all those different trainings. Everyone hates doing all those trainings. We created one of those for our coaches to have to do, just so that we could get out what we want from them. Like, we expect you, especially at the middle school level, like you're saying. I'll give a quick example. So I've been in this job for 4 years. And when I first started, I went to a football game, um, a middle school football game, and the coach was cussing at the kids at the game. And I just thought, I had two thoughts. One, certainly not at a game, like with people's grandmas there, like we're not cussing at kids. Two, it's August. Like, why are we so frustrated with these children at the beginning of the season? What could they have possibly done to warrant this? So I think, making sure that our middle school coaches especially understand where their kids are. Maybe they've got all newbies and they're just going to have to be super duper patient. But just to understand that they can't treat a sixth grader, an 11-year-old, the way they would treat a high school varsity athlete. Like, they're just different people. And that's like I said, that's been like a huge thing for us in our district, to make sure that our coaches understand why kids play, especially at middle school level when they're just trying things out. And that it's our job to try and keep them in there. Like, I saw some stat that like 70% of kids quit sports by 13. Like, it's crazy. And it's because it's not fun. Like, they're getting yelled at, they're getting cussed at, they're all this stuff. They're not getting playing time, just all the things. So if we could keep our younger coaches of our younger athletes, if they could keep that at the front of their minds, that yes, it's your job to be successful. Certainly, you want them to be successful because that's going to be why they want to stay as well. But also, it's your job to keep them excited about it, so you can hand them off to some other coach. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, keep passing them along so the kid actually likes doing what they're doing.
So one thing I've noticed, and it makes sense because the different levels, but have you ever noticed your candidate pool for say like varsity or high school sports versus um, middle school sports? Um, I find a few more parents make their way into the middle school pool, and so talking about finding your people, you might have someone who, okay, that I know they're going to be on time. I know, and maybe they're like an external, right? I know they're going to be on time. They, they're loyal. They're excited about it. They're passionate about the program. They might have the skill set. They've coached before, but they've only ever coached their own. That's one of the challenges I find with hiring and being a smaller school too. We do have a lot of parents, and not to say that parents can't be fantastic coaches. They can be. I just always worry about are they going to be able to coach others? Or if their only experience is coaching their own, automatically I'm thinking it's probably not the best fit. If there's another option, we'll go there. I still might have an interview, but there is something to be said about someone who has coached other kiddos. Like I mean, I coached sports varsity level like long before my kiddos were even born, and so having that baseline now that I am coaching my kiddos, my own personal kiddos, in travel sports and stuff. It just, again, I have a different perspective on it, but there's still always the fear of, oh, is there bias there? Is there some favoritism? Do you I guess what are you finding in terms of parent coaches, and obviously not sharing any horror stories, but just what are some things that maybe, how do you approach that? You got one applicant and it happens to be a parent. How are we approaching that?
If I got one applicant, I don't care who it is. I'm just thankful that it's not me. That was we just went through that with my tennis program. I thought I was coaching boys tennis this spring because I had nobody, and I got a parent who's she's a staff member. She's been an assistant coach with our girls tennis program for a few years, off and on. And her senior daughter was going to do track again. I mean, she's always done track. So she wasn't going to do it. And then all of a sudden her daughter said, you know what? Like, I'm going to nursing school. I'm not doing track in college. Like, it's not that fun. I'm not going to track this year. And so mom was like, well, I'm going to be at everything for boys tennis now. So if you still need somebody, I can do it. I'm like, sold. But I've had some, obviously, other situations where we've hired parents and it's not gone that well, like my junior high track program I was talking about earlier. So I don't, you just you can set whatever expectations you want, but you're still going to have to coach them through all the situations all the time if they've not got that experience like what you were describing. You've got, from prior to. It's always going to come up, and there's always going to be other parents like, oh well, their kid gets to do this. Well, it's tracked. Like, let's look at the numbers. Her kid's just not fast. It's okay.
Right. That helps.
It's different when it's like the drama program or something like that. That's where it gets hairy.
So what about just real quick? I was moving on to parents and families before kind of moving on to that last topic. How are you? And I struggle with this one, just because I'm so darn busy. Like I feel like with all the internal stuff, that I'm like, oh, yeah, I probably need to get an opinion here. I probably need to, hey, what do they think about this? And really, in order to get that support and buy-in and trust, right, from your parents and from your families, how are you engaging families to to support your program? And maybe it's just filling the void of like, hey, who's covering concessions tonight? Who's working the scorebook? Like at middle school, like those aren't like paid positions or anything, right? And so we just need people all the time, and you want them to be valued. You want to make sure that if they have an opinion on something, we're listening to that. It's just tough because the time flies so fast too, with trying to get things done, and it's a challenge. So I guess, how are you engaging parents and families in your programs?
I'll use my volleyball team for an example. My volleyball coach is like 70 something and absolutely cannot run a Google sheet to set up a concession stand. Like, that's just not going to happen. So I get to set up his concession stand workers for him. And I send it out. And thankfully our people, like, this is the expectation they generally know. But we do have a lot of first timers coming through as families have gotten smaller over the years. Like, that is another, kind of part of this that we're battling, is we've got first time parents. Instead of people who have had more rural community. We got a lot of families when I was going through school that were having, I was graduating with the youngest of, 8 or 10 kids sometimes. And, now we're, 1 or 2. And so, you're teaching families all the time now. Volleyball was a struggle a little bit, because he's a new coach to the district. And so, thinks people get it, but we've had a gap since he was there, so they don't get it. And we're trying to reframe that, but we didn't get a lot of volunteers. We also have an 8th grade class that is like 17 girls in a whole grade, and 80 something boys. And so we've only got 6 eighth graders that are playing any sports. So it's tough to get, those parents to cover the seventh grade game sometimes because we don't have very many of them. They have to work disproportionately more games. But it was just, sending a remind, sending another remind. They watch me popping popcorn and then running in there, do starting lineups, and then throwing all the popcorn out because I burnt it. And then, you do that a couple times and they start to see like, oh, they do need some help. They also felt like there was some playing time issues, and I forwarded the email to the coach that I'd got. And then that night we were playing a team that could have beat 25-0, 25-0. And so everybody got some playing time. So then all of a sudden I was the hero because I fixed it, even though I did nothing besides forward the coach an email.
And it also happened to happened to be that
perfect.
Part of the schedule. It's like, yeah, totally planned that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then they all jumped in and started helping a little bit more. It was great. There are some tools out there. I don't know. I know, Don, you were at the conference, but we're not in the guys' breakout session. Sarah may have been, if you're the Sarah I'm thinking of. We have a bunch of Sarahs. But Kevin Bruni is an athletic director in Wisconsin. He runs a survey program called Grit Leadership. And it's a survey tool that you would use for a coach evaluation. A lot of districts, they use it, replace their coach evaluation with it. And it asks a bunch of questions of parents and of students, the same questions, and then the coach. And the goal for the coach is to say, hey, how do you think your kids and your parents are going to rate you on this question? And that shifts your coach eval totally to be based on, instead of you guessing, how you think they're doing, because you can't be at practice every day and you're not at every game necessarily. I know I'm at most games, but some of us aren't, right? We may not see all the things that we're asking for on a coach eval. And so it shifts the focus to what's the student experience, which is really what our goal is anyway, is to provide a positive student experience. And you're getting that from the students, you're getting that from the parents. And then where you see a disparity, then you're asking the coach, hey, you thought you were going to get rated an 8 here, but you actually got rated a 4. So what do you think that disparity is, and how do you then going forward combat that, right? If you think you're doing an 8, how do you get to an 8 if they think you're a 4? And that has been, the schools that have done that have really, really enjoyed it. I asked my coaches to do an end of season student evaluate, like almost like a college course evaluation, like just on the end of the season, and reflect on it. And everybody's gotten something actionable, even the junior high coaches grumble about it. I don't want to do that. I'm not going to do that. Okay, well then they do it, and then they find something actionable next season that they didn't realize was detracting from the student experience because they've done it the same way for 25 years.
It's interesting. It is about sometimes that questioning and how we frame it. It's a very, so as dean of students, I get a very different answer when I ask a kid, hey, what happened? And then they kind of think of what they're going to tell me. I sometimes like to ask, like, hey, what am I going to see when I pull up the camera? I know you're going to tell me what your story is, but what do you think the other person's going to tell me? Right. And just trying to have that more reflective lens to think, ooh, it's not just about me. He's not just going to talk to me, or like it's really going to be surveying, others who are close to the situation, or others who are part of the team who may have a different lens. And you talk about that student experience being, being number one. I think that is not about their coaching, not about their coaching style, not about their wins and losses. What kind of experience did you give student athletes? And I'd say throwing that up there in the vision to guide your decision making moving forward is super helpful. So
I didn't do a good job of tying that. Oh, sorry, I didn't do a good job of tying that back to the parents. But if the parents are seeing that, hey, we're doing what we can do to provide the best experience for the students, like,
Right.
That's the playing time argument. My students not having a good experience because they're at practice every day and they don't get to play. That's the argument. Every parent argument that we have comes down to the student experience. When jersey doesn't fit my kid right? Like all those things are just about the experience the kid is having at its core. And so if we can show that that's what we care about, one way or another, whether it's, hey, I'll pass that on to the coach, as simple as forwarding an email and then I'm the hero because it gets fixed, or, a grit leadership style survey, or the parents, the other thing is if you can tell your story before it gets told at the bar after the game, that helps too, right? And so some of those, all of those things can help a little bit with that. And if you're coming back to, it's about the kid's experience, I think that'll help with those parent issues.
So real quick, I want to maybe leave some time on the back end, and then we'll probably even like stop the recording after this next segment. So not quite yet, Dawn, just in case, Sarah, Nicole, or others, if we just want to ask some questions, and then also if there are any kind of specifics or other situations we want to walk through that we wouldn't want out there. But the last kind of agenda item, it's keep it moving, and really it's keeping the plate spinning, right? So we have these ideas, we've got our vision, we know what it should look like, which is very easy in a bubble, and very easy on paper. And all of a sudden we get to the season. Before you know it, we have an early dismissal here in professional development. We've got an off day, heaven forbid, either ourselves or one of our kiddos are sick or something, or we miss time. And before you know it, that week has gone by, and everything that we said we were going to do has not been done. Your monthly newsletter, well, right now, if you haven't sent out your March newsletter, it's almost April, everybody. So, so just thinking around that, it's a lot to manage. And so one thing that I've just done, I have a website, Metcalf Athletics website, and to be honest, it was like a Google site that I just kind of made as soon as I instantly found that, like, oh man, like we don't have a great website platform at our school. We use ISUs, and it is, you really got to know what you're doing to get in there and be like that. Like, I haven't gone all the webmaster trainings. I'm like, I just need something I can just quickly change, and or if I put a wrong time, I can just quickly go in there and edit. Things like that. And so I maybe turn your attention, and if you want to open it, great. If not, that's okay too. But one of the things that I do is, you notice it says at activities and athletics update March 2026. And all that stuff is just expandable. And I send home a monthly email. It's a newsletter, right? I just give a snippet, say, hey, here's just a few bullet points. If you are depending on that little email to give you all the information, that's not going to help you. Again, this is just a taste. Please go to the website for everything else, because what happens is every single time I put in an email, an email anymore is just like a newspaper. As soon as it's sent, as soon as it's printed, right, it's out of date. And if I put the wrong time, you've now just sent the whole school community the wrong time for the parent meeting, and you can't adjust it. Well, obviously I can do that, within this, and just publish a new version of it, or with those updated times. But like, I have on here, like, my frequently asked questions, like, hey, what are physicals? Are they good? Like, how long are they good for? Like, just all the questions that I always have to answer all the time.
That's great.
Just put them in there. And that way, now the hard thing is, once you have all this information out there, guess what you have to do? You have to maintain it. You gotta audit your own stuff. And I know for a fact there's gonna be stuff on here that I'm like, oh, that's not quite true anymore. And so I do have to have that process maybe in the summer to kind of go through and audit those things. But just keep that in mind. Again, you're talking about, being able to tell your story before somebody else does. This is a place where they can get the meat of the information. Also, I recommend, man, did I do it in this one? Sometimes I'll even hide a coach's corner too. One little trick that let me view the published, because I have a different version. I don't see it. Sometimes I'll hide in there, but what you can do is on your website, sometimes, like, you can have a coach's corner on that, and you can hide it from navigation. But, like, let's say at the very bottom of your website, like where it says Thomas Metcalf School, it has like the address. I can make the S in South University Street, I can make that S a link to a coach's corner. So it can be on your website, but like hidden, so not everybody's going to find that. You might have other information you might want to give to other coaches that's buried in there. I do that on one of my websites. It doesn't look like I have it on this particular one, but just that way coaches can also get maybe a little more in-depth information that you wouldn't necessarily share with everybody, just a little more rationale behind things. And just to help someone who's just getting started, maybe you give them an example of a sign-up genius, right, for their concession stand, just to kind of get them going, or to connect them with other coaches and other programs. There's some things that I think of. So anyway, that's just for me. How do we keep those plates spinning, keep your things moving forward? Just make sure that you're writing them down, review your student handbook, put your policies in there, because we have to adhere to those. And I think those are pretty helpful if those are written down. So let's take a moment, if you can, Dawn, and let's just pause or stop the recording.
Yeah, let's see how I do that. I'm looking. There we go. Stop. It should be.